Good evening. This is the Conscious Hour. Yes, I'm in a new attire today. I'm sitting in my massage chair. hmm When you get older, it's nice to have a massage chair. Anyways, tonight's focus is this: where are we headed? How did we get here? And why you all need to pay attention. Like, wake up. We look at our country right now in the United States, and we see that 35 or 38 states have pledged their allegiance to Israel. That should shock anybody. But then you have to ask the question, how did we get here? How did we get here? And why is the entire world in chaos? It's simple. When you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, eventually they're going to come to a head. And what I'm talking about is the military industrial complex, the disrespect for life on all levels, from the food that they process that's chemicalized to the wars that they drop bombs and chemicalize everything. And they a lot of these people say they're Christians. How can you be a Christian and disrespect the gift of life? Let's just go back to simple words. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not judge. Love thy neighbor like you love yourself. That becomes the problem. Because we haven't been educated the proper way. Oh, my goodness. Yes, we should be using the Queen's English or the King's whatever. I'm being a little humorous here. Our education system was created so we could fit in a cog in a wheel. It wasn't designed to have you manifest your highest potential. Nope. They don't care about that. They wanted you to fit into the machine. So who is Gregory de Bruler? That was my name, Gregory Lee de Bruler. I was born that way. My new name is Gregory Lee Francis for my mother. She always said Gregory, spell it with an I, Francis, Gregory Lee Francis Agnetti de Bruler. Agnetti is my mother's name. And in Central America, they put the mother on the end. Well, the mother gave birth. She should be in front of the husband. Okay, so I switched them around. De Bruler is actually Flemish, Belgique, that area there, French. Yeah. And you put the two together between France and Belgium, and you get the hot yeller. That's my voice. This is the Twilight Zone. Literally, we're living in the Twilight Zone. And for the younger generation who doesn't know about what the Twilight Zone is, go on YouTube and watch Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone, this genre, 2025, is, could you ever imagine the world would be this fucked up? Now, there are people that are happy about what's going on. Mm-hmm. Look at Donald Trump. He's making America great again. For white people. For white evangelical people. Not for the rest of them. You're illegal. You got a name of Garcia. You're blah, 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 blah. This isn't what you learned when you were a kid. So how did we get here? Israel, we'll call it Israel. Okay, the IDF, the Zionist machine, is in our country. It's been in our country for a long time. It set up the banking systems. So you have these oligarchs, Roth, Warburgs, the Coons, the Lobes, the Rockefellers, the names go on and on and on. There's a good book called The Unseen Hand. If you want to read that one, it's excellent. Fits it all together. And they've created a world where they believe that they can go and invade, rape, and pillage countries. So we're at a critical point right now in the United States because you can see what Congress is doing. They're moving full speed ahead to eliminate any diversity and make it simple. when the Christopher Columbus bumped into the shores and discovered America, which he didn't, but whatever. And then they started killing all the Indians, natives, indigenous people, Aztecas that came from Central and South America, all the way through North America. Those white extremists did the same thing that they're doing right now with the Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. And it's 2025. Now let's talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a flim flam man. He's the guy that dresses up with polyester suits, white patent leather shoes, and a toupee. Okay. I had a good friend named Steve Melton, showed up from California. They could be brothers. This was back in a long time ago, in the 70s. Anyway, so when Trump showed up on The Apprentice, I watched it like twice, and I told this couple from Abilene, Texas, we were sitting down in Palm Springs in the wintertime. I said, he's going to run for president. This was like 2012. And they looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, he's perfect. He's exactly what's going to come. How do I know this stuff? I was lied to when I was a little kid. They told me the Russians were coming to get me. And in first kindergarten, I had to pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag, with bombs bursting in the air, and an air raid siren. I had to duck underneath the desk because the Russians were going to come and blow us up. Okay, so I came home from kindergarten. And my mom said, how was your first day of school, Gregory? And I said, oh, it was fun. And she goes, and then what? I said, I don't like the Star Spangled Banner. She said, what? What's the bombs bursting in the air thing? It's really creepy. Gregory was tuned in when he was really young, like landed in here, said, whoa, I've been here before. These people are really fucked up. Anyways, then we have air raid sirens. Duck and cover, climb underneath your desk. Okay, kindergarten, you're climbing underneath the desk. The Russians are coming to get you. You don't understand what that means. You just do what they say, order you, tell you what to do, tell you how to think. How we got here. And then by third grade, I knew it was all bullshit. I knew it was bullshit in kindergarten, but I wasn't mature enough to say, I'm not laying at my desk anymore. But by third grade, I knew. And how did I know? Well, because my Uncle Booby, that was his name, William B. Agnetti. He was a captain shot down over Germany, flying a B-17, captured by the Germans, put in a concentration camp, and the Russians freed him. And so when he would come back, I was born in 52. So by 58, 59, he was going back and forth to Egypt and to Greece and different countries in the Middle East, and maybe even went to Iran. But I think he was a lieutenant colonel when he finally got retired. I think he was intelligence. And we would talk about all of that area there. So I knew about Iran. I knew about Israel. I knew about Egypt. I knew about Turkey. I knew about Lebanon. And I always wanted to go, wow, I want to go there. Eventually I did. But anyways, going back to Uncle Booby, he told me, the Russians aren't our enemy. I looked at him. He says, no, they were ally in World War I. They were ally in World War II. And do you know another piece of tidbits I found? That during the Civil War, Romanov, who was the wealthiest person in the world, Russia, he gave $300 million to the North to fight the fascists in the South. Who were the fascists? The Zionists. They've been in our country for a long time. They're the ones that got rid of all those other foreigners, because they want to make America great again. Okay, let's get back to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an entrepreneur. We all know that. He built the Taj Mahal, ripped off most of his contractors. He likes building things, the tower or whatever, And he also likes to launder money. If you read anything about the Pandora Papers, there is these huge, huge skyscrapers built down in Panama. And he was selling them. Yeah, they were selling for like 250, 185, 250, but he was selling for $5, $6, $7, $800,000. It was a money laundering thing. The Russians were involved, a whole bunch of people involved with it. Money laundering has been going on forever. Anyways, let's get back to Donald Trump currently. So, Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner was at Harvard University talking about this new Gaza, the future city of Gaza. And I watched this thing and recorded it. I put it on the Conscious Hour. And then I made a sequel to it. But then he later was there the third week of April in Gaza promoting waterfront real estate. So in the research I'd done, I figured out there's about $400 billion that had been allocated to rebuild that whole coastline so it'd be Viva Las Vegas and get rid of the Palestinians. Look where we are. Mm-hmm. So Donald Trump has to perform. He has to perform. Because if he doesn't perform, they banked on him. He'll just die, and then it'll bring J.D. Vance in. Mm-hmm. And he's a total puppet. He's there for the ride. And the scary part of the whole thing is the cabinets is with, if I had to put a bunch of wannabes in power, like, I won't mention names, I don't want to insult them, in cabinet positions, that's who I'd pick. They're clueless. Kash Patel, like a deer in headlights. Sorry. I can go down the list. I don't want to go down the list. I won't go there. But what's happening is this. They're destroying America. They're destroying the infrastructure. They're destroying the labor base. Labor base, yes. You think you're going to get white folks to go out and harvest all those crops? Nope. That's why we had an immigration policy. That's why we've had an immigration policy since I was a little kid. The people could come in and work, and they go home in the wintertime, and they come back and work, and they go home again, back and forth. And we worked fine. And then in the 80s, they started fucking around with it. Yeah, the bureaucrats did. Another story on that I'll tell you later. So anyways, we have this crisis where we're sitting right now where Donald Trump has to perform. Netanyahu told all the Palestinians on August 26th to get the hell out of the coastline. Get out. Move. You got to be out. In 2 weeks. We're coming to get you if you don't. Look what he's doing. The media is so divided right now, not divided, but so focused on the drama in America. They needed drama in America because while we're having our drama here and while the television's focusing on all these crises here in the United States and how, we've got our problems here, they're ignoring the fact that they're bombing these people to death. Yes, they're dropping bombs on them where their food is. They're burning them to death. Little kids are being blown into pieces because the media is owned by the Zios. Every one of the fucking mainstream medias is pablum. Sorry, NPR, you got bought. You're on a raid. They got you on a rein. Don't want you to get too far off to the middle of the track they want you on, even though you could go really far to the left and still be part of the problem. I was shocked when I came back and heard the reporting from NPR. I've been gone out of the country for 16 years. I came back, I went, whoa, they got bought out. We are sitting in the middle of the biggest crisis this country has ever faced in its history. In its history, folks, wake up. You don't trust the politicians. You don't trust Republicans or Democrats. That's why we call them the Beltway bandits. What you do trust is your instincts when you get your head out of the politics. Put yourself in Jesus's place as a Christian. Thou shalt not kill. Let that sink in. How can you kill? How can you appreciate somebody? How could you be standing behind somebody who's out there murdering and sending billions of taxpayer dollars over there to steal resources so Netanyahu and the Zionists can have their global vision of a greater Israel project where we take over Egypt, we take over Saudi Arabia, we take over the whole damn region. Because if they go down that next step, they're going to be blown to smithereens. And it could go to a nuclear war. because Netanyahu has it. I was laughing when, oh, does Netanyahu have nuclear weapons? It was a discussion, months ago, whatever. And the press was debating, well, he could have, bullshit. In 1994 to 1996, I believe Spire was created in 1994. Spire was the first mass surveillance system created by Israel. I'm into all this shit. And I think it was 94, 95, whatever in that period, okay? At that point, we were having a discussion at one of the technical advisory boards I was sitting on, and we were talking about Israel. And you know what the numbers was for nuclear weapons? 440. And now we're sitting here having the same debate. Why? Because all the lemmings out there, I don't know nothing, and the press doesn't know nothing, because they were never allowed to do really true investigative reporting. Now there's a bunch of them that do. Don't get me wrong. There's a whole host of ones. You go on YouTube to find them. But then when you read the mainstream media like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Washington Post, and the LA, it's just pablum. It's pablum. It's propaganda to keep you in line with this industrial complex, and they don't care about you. So what we need to do, folks, is you need to realize one thing. If you're a Christian, walk away from anyone that's trying to corral you into believing that Donald Trump is working on behalf of the Christians in America, because he's not. And I'll tell you the truth. I've been around a long time. I've come around the sun more than once, called reincarnation. And I read the memoirs of St. Francis in college. But before that, there was this little card that had the statements from St. Francis. And I read that when I was young. And I remember the words, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not judge. When I was in kindergarten, when I was in Sunday school. And I heard this and I was looking at the world going, why? How could we be at these wars? We just got out of a war. What was that all about? I was young trying to figure out why we were at war. And then I found out that Russia was our enemy, but it wasn't our enemy. And I'm laying underneath the desk. So for you now, current day folks, we have to come together. We have to come together as human beings, as this wonderful gift of life. All life is sacred. All life is sacred. We cannot judge. You don't put a stamp on somebody's forehead and says, "Oh, you're a Zionist and you're a communist and you're a socialist and you're from Germany and you're from France and you're from." Get rid of it.